Good evening. It's 5:30 p.m. on Wednesday, June 29th, and I'll call to order this regular meeting of the Cuyahoga Falls Board of Education. Ms. Stoikoi, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Coco?
Here.
Mr. Gomez?
Here.
Mr. Harris?
Here.
Mrs. Schaefer?
Here.
Ms. White?
Here.
Thank you. Item B, agenda. Number 1, motion to approve the agenda. It's recommended that the Board of Education approve the agenda of the June 29th, 2022 regular Board of Education meeting. Action by the Board of Education and adoption of a consent agenda means that all items are adopted by one singular motion unless a member of the Board of Education, Treasurer, or Superintendent requests that any such item be removed from the consent agenda and voted upon separately.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Ms. Coco?
Aye.
Mr. Gomez?
Aye.
Mr. Harris?
Aye.
Mrs. Schaefer?
Aye.
Ms. White?
Aye.
Thank you. Item C, opening ceremony. Welcome our vision, Cuyahoga Falls City Schools, the hub of our community. Committed to a culture of caring. We innovate, we create, we personalize education for all. Our mission, every student, every day, every opportunity. Item 2, informational items. This meeting is a meeting of the Cuyahoga Falls Board of Education in public for the purpose of conducting the school district's business. It is not a public community meeting, although there are opportunities for public participation. If an individual wishes to address the board regarding a topic found on the meeting agenda, the individual must complete a registration form found inside the attendance notebook and present it to the treasurer. Following the introduction of the topic by the board president, followed by board discussion, the individual will be recognized. If an individual wishes to address the board regarding a topic not found on the meeting agenda, they must notify the superintendent and/or board president of the topic no later than 3 business days in advance of the meeting. These individuals may share their comments during the board business portion of the agenda. In both cases, comments will include the name and address of the individual and be limited to 3 minutes. In addition, in public session, the board will not hear complaints about school personnel, nor against any person connected with the school system. An unabridged board agenda for this meeting can be found on your electronic device at the address shown on the screen, and for your convenience, hard copies of the board agenda may be found on the table near the entrance next to the sign-in book. The next regularly scheduled meeting is July 13th, 2022, the Cuyahoga Falls High School Library at 5:30 p.m. Item 3, our Pledge of Allegiance. Mrs. Schaefer.
Please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Item D, presentations. We have one presentation tonight. I'll invite up Mr. Moyer to give us a wrap up on our work with resilient leadership and some steps forward. And then they're getting the PowerPoint for you. Is that as well? Yes, because that records your voice for the...
Thank you for the technical help. Good evening, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here among friends, and I've enjoyed my work with Cuyahoga Falls Schools this year for sure. And the purpose tonight is to kind of give an overview of the resilient leadership work this year with the district, both looking at the book study and also the coaching component. So I count it a privilege to be here with each of you, so thank you. So next slide if we could, please. So the book study started off, this whole initiative actually started off with a conversation between myself and the former board member, Karen Schofield. She reached out to me about doing a leadership book study, and after some discussions, we settled on the book Resilient Leadership 2.0. And in the midst of our conversation, I asked Karen, what are you hoping to accomplish? What are you looking to see? And as I thought through the book study itself, and I think the book's really, really valuable, I think a central component, and for those that worked with me this year, perhaps you would agree, that in order to really understand the material in an in-depth way, I suggested to Karen that we offer coaching for anyone that was interested in coaching. And so originally we had coaching available for 6 individuals in the cabinet. That then was expanded to others that wanted to be involved. And so we did a book study that happened in the fall. We met 4 times throughout the fall semester. And then in October, we began an individual and group leadership coaching. And 15 people agreed to go through one-on-one coaching. We did a couple of group sessions as well. And sitting down and looking at the math, we did about 80 combined hours of coaching. And it's really designed to take the principles of resilient leadership and to more deeply embed them in individuals' professional and personal leadership. Certainly I think those two things, the book study and the coaching component, I think married themselves very, very well. So thank you. Next slide, if we could, please. As I think about Cuyahoga Falls Schools and just some conversations I've had with individuals and just the big takeaways, it certainly has unique challenges. I think about 3 superintendents in a 1 year. That's something that's unique to the district. I think about a building plan that you're currently undergoing. I think about the idea of merging 3 middle schools into 1. So those are unique challenges, but those challenges of superintendent and also a building campaign, even though those are things that may not be going on in other districts around us, there are principles that come out of that. And so my goal this year with the individuals in Cuyahoga Falls was to look at principles that we can apply to all challenges, those 2 for sure, but in leading any organization. And so let's take a look at those principles. I was thinking of this idea. We've all heard the phrase before that people hate change. So I would imagine if the board announced, this is not going to happen, by the way, for the official record, but if the board announced that teacher class sizes would be cut in half and teachers would all receive a 20% increase in pay, that would not be something, I don't like change. That would be well received, at least among the teaching staff. So it's not that people necessarily fear change, but what we tend to fear is we fear loss. And I think from a leadership standpoint for the board and also the others that are here or anyone that's listening, anytime you lead change, there's going to be resistance. And that resistance primarily comes from individuals' perception of loss. It may be actual loss, it might be perceived loss, but it's real. And so as I think about lessons that I glean from conversations and observations in my own personal study and reading, is just to be aware that this loss is real. For some, the loss is more intense than others. So it can be lost in status, it can be lost in certainty, it can be lost in predictability, and sense of relationships. I think about 3 buildings going into 1, what that would look like. There's going to be a sense of loss among some, even if the ideas are great. So just to be aware of that, I think it's really, really helpful. Secondly, change involves deciding which parts to keep and which parts to discard. So I think about packing. So you pack for a vacation and your suitcase is pretty full and you suddenly thought, oh my gosh, I got to have this outfit for this, but I only have so much room. So you got to figure out what to take out and what to keep. So that's really an important challenge. So as you go forward as a district in the building campaign and going forward, be thinking about that. We're not getting rid of everything, but we can't take everything with us. And so there's going to be some things that we decide we're not going to keep, ways of doing things that no longer make sense for today's students. And that's going to lead to, I'll say it this way, a grieving process. That might sound strong, but some will really lament that change. And one mistake I see leaders make is they kind of run roughshod over that. They have a vision of what's best for students, the third point there, and they think this is where we're going, this is great for students. And that may in fact be true, but ignoring the loss that people feel will come back to lead to more resistance for sure. So being willing to acknowledge that for sure. And so leaders need to acknowledge that this loss is in real and tangible ways. So through conversations with people, to understand that people have that sense of loss for sure. And it may be people themselves, board members or administrators and others that are also going through that sense of loss. The second thing to note is that systems like to stay stuck. So resilient leadership is based in systems theory, and one of the elements of systems theory is that systems like homeostasis. They like predictable. And so when you change that, when you're the individual that's driving that change, there's oftentimes pushback or resistance against that change. So that's just something that naturally happens. And I think one of the key things is that we tie change to the mission of the district. So we're not changing things just because we decided we want to do this, because we know change is painful. But what we've decided is this is our mission. You read that opening statement every board meeting, keeping the guiding principles at the forefront. That allows change to be tolerable because this is the direction we're heading. We're heading due north, and because of that, this is what has to happen. Certainly conversation of what that looks like, but tying change to mission certainly is key as I think about that. So some lessons I think take away for myself as a leader, for the leaders that are here, whether it's personal or professional. Listening carefully and with curiosity. The phrase, everybody has a story. And so being, there's a time to balance advocacy with curiosity for sure, but listen carefully to others, listen with curiosity. Secondly, I believe that effective leadership flows from presence. Certainly, we've talked about the iceberg in here before, and above the water, you got to be able to do good stuff in the rational sphere. But that sense of presence that a leader has, in my view, is where leadership really is found. The ability to have that less anxious presence. The phrase I can remember that someone shared with me a long time ago is that you can't influence somebody who is moving away from you. And so here at the board or among the administrative team, as you lay out a vision of something, there's others that have to carry that out. And having a curious and a listening standpoint, being that less anxious presence, allows your influence to grow, allows others to move toward you, and thus change is a bit easier, even though it's certainly challenging. I also share that every policy choice has trade-offs. So whenever there's a policy change that happens, there's an opportunity cost. There's the economics teacher in me. There's something you could have chosen that you're not. And so being mindful of that there are no zero-sum games, that you're going to have some sense, or you're going to take this, but you're going to have to give up that. And keeping the forefront of your mission as a district allows for the priorities to be set in a sensible way, understanding that there are things that we're going to have to discard for sure. Yes, thank you. Next slide, if we will. So I count it a privilege to have talked with many of you in this room. I have great memories of leading a book study and having really active discussions, some one-on-one coaching conversations I've had with individuals where I saw real significant growth, and I count that a privilege. And so I want to thank the Cuyahoga Falls School for the opportunity to work with you this year. If you ever need to talk going forward, there's my email, there's my cell phone. Happy to chat going forward, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
Thank you. I do have that PowerPoint, so I will email that out to everyone as well. And I'll email it to our administrators so they have that information because they were part of that book study. Okay. Thank you. On to item E, Treasurer CFO's business consent agenda. Ms. Stoikoi.
Thank you. I'd like to recommend that the Board of Education approve all items listed in the treasurer's consent agenda.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion?
Thanks for bearing with me today, and a couple of changes last minute, as we were finishing some things up and trying to do it. And thanks to David today, because I've had my computer switched out a couple times over the last couple days, so that was a little bit of part of the delay this morning. But he spent probably more time than necessary trying to fix a problem for me, but it was much appreciated. So we made those last minute changes to final appropriations and the advances and transfers. Most of them, they're not significant changes from what it was. Those are something we have to do in order to close the books, all of those, sale dated, advances, transfers, and then the temporary appropriations gets us going for next year as of Friday.
Okay. Any comments?
Just thank you. Thank you for everything that you do. I cannot even imagine what the past week has been for you. So, and when do you
Don't
get a
want to.
vacation?
Next month.
Yeah, about next week sometime, late next week starts, so, yes.
Okay. Please call the roll.
Mr. Gomez?
Aye.
Mr. Harris?
Aye.
Mrs. Schaefer?
Aye.
Ms. White?
Aye.
Ms. Coco?
Aye.
Thank you. Item F, Treasurer CFO's business, Ms. Stoikoi.
I'd like to recommend that the Board of Education approve the May 2022 investment schedule and monthly spending report.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion, Ms. Stoikoi?
Yes, okay, so let's look real quick here. We will pull, we can pull up the interest, we'll start there real quick. Let me pull it up too, so you can see it. Okay, you can see May was a pretty decent month, especially, it might have been one of our best months all year, I think. It was. So that's always good. You will see some changes, not necessarily with the interest, but as part of the true-up process, we have pulled some of the money from Red Tree that we've spent for the construction project to move it into Huntington, since we've been, cutting checks and doing that kind of thing. So we tried to true up those accounts here at the end of the year to match what our actual cash balance is. So you'll see a little bit of a difference there. May affect the investments, but we really didn't. It wasn't that much because we haven't really spent all that much yet. So so that was good. Let's look at food service. So as I mentioned before, we can just go down to the bottom. They're a little under 800,000 at the end of May, and they were just, I can tell you, to close out June, they're gonna be just a little under $1 million. So, they've got a good thing going on there. I told Bill, now he owes us something. So, the general fund. Pretty typical for both revenues and expenses. May, we saw our rollback in homestead, so that's the majority of our revenue for that. But it's typical that we are expenditures over revenues in May and especially June, so it's pretty similar trend. We ended with about almost 23 million cash. Don't be shocked when that number takes a dip. It's really not a dip. It's gonna take a dip in June, but it's because of the amount we had to advance. And so it's not considered that it's in that general fund cash balance. But as of July 1st, at the end of July, you'll see it come back. So it isn't actually a true indicator. It's gonna be about, because our advances were about 2.3 million. So that's not usual, but it's because of the building project and because of the ESSER funds combined. There's a lot more advances going on than typical, so don't be alarmed at that. There's really not much going on. I would pull up the other ones, but nothing much has changed. You'll see a little. I think we spent $7,800 in May for the building project, so it's really not a big change in any of those accounts. You will see more in June because we paid our first TDA installment, which was about $1.5 million. So you'll see a bigger change there, and we can go through those at that point. But that's really it. Everything's in good shape.
Thank you. Any questions or comments?
I had a question.
Yeah.
So we're kind of in the time where we're looking at only pandemic inclusive numbers and like the. So like we're looking at the 3 years, the 1 year is like part pandemic, whatever.
Yeah.
So are we getting back to, since I can't like see the numbers from
Yes.
pre-pandemic, are we
Yeah.
getting kind of back to pre-pandemic number? I was specifically, what I was looking at was food service.
Yeah, so they're actually better than pre-pandemic numbers because of the fact that reimbursements were increased and everybody was getting reimbursed. So any meal, whether you were free or reduced or not, was eligible for reimbursement, and that reimbursement got increased this year. So they're doing, I think before, in a good year, if you look at some of those numbers there, I mean, they were hovering right around 200, 225 most of the time, and now they're at almost 800,000. And I said they're almost at $1 million to close out the year. So it's probably the best they've ever been, in all honesty. But those numbers over in 20 in the beginning were pretty typical, and that one is a little misleading too, in a sense, because that was about the time that we changed from 26 pays to 24 pays, and everybody went on 24 pays. So previously, food service didn't get paid in the summer. It was split over like 21. So that threw those months off as well, because now all of a sudden there's expenses in July and August that weren't there previously, because it's spread out. So they were heavier in the other months. It lessened the expenses in the succeeding months, but so even that 20 that wasn't pandemic is a little bit off. You see how they fell down to like 25,000 at some point in September, and that's really what that's from.
And when you look at cash and all funds, you remember we passed that 4 mil operating levy as part of the bond issue in 2019, and we've only really been collecting that since pandemic times. So our cash on hand has been better, partially because we got those influx of funds, but a big chunk of that's because that 4 mil started
Yeah.
collecting. So I think it's our best year ever for all funds and cash on hand as well. But a lot of that's because of that 4 mil.
Yep.
Thank you.
The other thing Ms. Doikoi let me know is that she is going to reach out to Huntington because when they slashed us down to 0% interest on our accounts, it was because the Fed slashed the rates, but now the Fed is upping the rates. So she's going to reach out to them to see if that means we'll be getting some nice interest on our Huntington account as well.
I'm waiting to hear back from him, because one of the things, either in July or August board meeting, is they are up for a new depository agreement. So we signed basically a contract with Huntington to do our banking, and it's up in August. So you will see like another 5-year contract to continue with Huntington. So when he gets me that, he's supposed to get me those answers too.
Okay. Please call the roll.
Mr. Harris?
Aye.
Mrs. Schaefer?
Aye.
Ms. White?
Aye.
Ms. Coco?
Aye.
Mr. Gomez?
Aye. And your comments?
I'm good. It's been a long week.
What about your
month,
award you got?
And okay, all
Tell us about it.
right. We did receive notification earlier this week that, and I've shared. I don't remember when we received the GFOA award for our fiscal 21 audit, but we also received earlier this week the ASBO award for, I think, Certificate in Excellent Reporting or something of that nature. ASBO is the Association of School Business Officials in the country. OASBO is our state chapter that I do a lot of work with, and so this is the national. Those are the two places we submit our audit to each year for those awards.
Congratulations. Okay. On to item G, Superintendent CEO's business. Mr. Shabady is in New Orleans on a work trip, getting good information about technology. So in his place tonight, we have Mrs. McClure.
Thank you, Mr. Gomez. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve all items listed in the superintendent's business consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? What?
A lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, please call the roll.
Mrs. Schaefer?
Aye.
Ms. White?
Aye.
Ms. Coco?
Aye.
Mr. Gomez?
Aye.
Mr. Harris?
Aye.
Thank you. Item H, do you have any comments, Mrs. McClure?
I do not unless anyone has questions for me.
Okay. Thank you. On to item I, board business. Number 1, resolution to renew levy, renew an existing tax levy. It's recommended that the Board of Education approve the resolution pursuant to section 5705.194 through 5705.197 of the Ohio Revised Code, submitting to the electors of the Cuyahoga Falls City School District the question of the renewal of an existing tax levy to be placed on the ballot during the November 8th, 2022 election.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
This is the second piece in order to put the emergency levy on the ballot in November. So I will take this after tonight, sometime before I leave on vacation, down to the Board of Elections to get all that submitted.
It's a renewal, it's not a new tax, and it's our emergency levy, which we will hopefully have more information about, a general plan of what we hope to do with that in the coming months for our community. The other thing to note is, if you saw, the legislature passed a bill changing how we have to write our tax levy information, but Ms. Doikoi checked, and that doesn't impact us on this. It'll start in 2023. Basically makes it more confusing for the voters. Unfortunately, but that's the reality.
Not hard.
Yeah. Okay. Please call the roll.
Ms. White?
Aye.
Ms. Coco?
Aye.
Mr. Gomez?
Aye.
Mr. Harris?
Aye.
Mrs. Schaefer?
Aye.
Thank you. Item 2, board community outreach, just to check in on how things go for our plans for July 29th.
We have verified that TDA will be coming down, that they will have the big, huge model with them, and be able to be with us that evening. I think we have everything else set up. I know Miss Stewart's working. I haven't had a chance to talk to Miss Stewart yet about maybe doing a small board piece about us and what we've been doing over the past. It's been a little bit of a crazy week, but hopefully maybe we can make some time, or I can connect with Dr. Solico about it this week.
Thank you. Mrs. Schaefer, shirt update.
Shirt update. I have contacted someone to do the shirts, and the shirts that we wanted are out of stock, so we had to change the shirts. And now I'm waiting.
Okay.
Okay. Okay.
It
So-
just needs to be wrinkle-free, that's all I
Very
ask.
well.
Yeah, I do too.
So that's going well. On to item 3, top Tigers discussion. So we've done, before the pandemic, what we did for top Tigers is all the board members would stand here and then they would collect all their things. But one thing we learned from COVID was that it was beneficial to have them come right up because they actually get to hear what's said about them. Because before they were worried about like tripping over cords and shaking our hands, which make kids very nervous. And they didn't get to hear all the good things that were said about them. So not doing that, I do think is beneficial going forward because I think the point is to hear all the good things that their educators see in them. So I would hope we keep that. But do we want to keep doing separate, or do we want to do all the grades together? We changed that because of COVID as well, because we wanted to space people out, not have as many people here. So let's start there. What are thoughts on that?
Well, which is easier for doing the top tigers, to have them the one night of the month, or is it easier to split them? I'm thinking of the,
Well,
Easier
honestly,
for-
Mrs. Erb does all of it.
Yeah.
okay,
So that would be a question for her.
She told me to let her know what we decide. That was what she
Okay.
told me when I talked to her,
okay.
so that she can make it happen.
I don't think it's an issue to pre-pack the bags.
No.
That's not
Okay.
really a problem.
No.
Would you like to pick up the flowers twice a month or once a month?
I don't really mind, it's 2.5 blocks from my house, so I don't mind doing it twice a month. It's fine. I know, Mr. Metcalf is committing to be here twice a month, so I don't know if it's easier for him to do them all at once. It is my suggestion with the Top Tigers, however we do it, is when we are doing, specifically the elementary, it takes a little bit longer because there's a lot more. If we did all the Top Tigers in one, then we maybe plan on lessening the presentations that evening and maybe making it the second, maybe do all the Top Tigers in one, and then the second one be the longer presentations. Because when we have those elementary students that do take a while, which we love, but then we tack on a lot of presentations, it can get lengthy, so,
Right.
that would be my,
Didn't we
my-
used to do that too, though? Try to do that? Put more
We used
presentation.
to try to do
Mhm.
recognition and any kind of presentation things at one meeting
one
and then
time.
all of the business at the other meeting, but then
Right.
inevitably something happened.
Comes up
And
always,
there
yes.
was some business that needed to go on the non-business meeting, so.
Yeah. I know, how something always does.
Well, and then if we keep doing the Staff Star Award, then all the kids would be here for that person as well, which may be beneficial.
I like that idea of them seeing the.
Just doing it once a month, I think it makes sense.
Right, and, honestly too, if you're looking at the older Top Tigers, for the elementary students to see the 6 through 12 kids that are here and the students and listening and hearing about them, is pretty awesome,
Yeah.
so.
It's encouraging.
Yeah, they do look up to the older students.
Okay, so I will talk to Mrs. Erb about that, to to see from her perspective, because I know she works with our building secretaries to get the letters out, to see which one would be more advantageous to make sure there's time to get those out. And then I will come back to you on that. The other thing we did for the first time this year is we had Top Tigers in June. I kept track, less than half of them actually came.
Yeah.
So I don't think that's beneficial going forward, because the point is to honor the student, and if the student's not there to be honored, we're missing the mark.
Yeah, and also with that, I know that there were a couple, parents of Top Tigers that weren't aware of then the Memorial Day Parade. And because they weren't getting recognized till June, and I'm not sure if it was a miscommunication, so then they were worried, well, does my student not? So I think to have them all done and wrapped up so that can be communicated before the parade is probably a good
Mr.
thing.
Metcalf would appreciate that too. So that's that. The other idea I had was that, no offense to Dr. Cruz, who does a wonderful job, but maybe since it's a board award, to get us involved, that the 5 of us would rotate, like each meeting, one of us would be up there with Dr. Selico giving the kids their little bag and congratulating them.
I like that.
Because it was created way back when as a board award, so that would give us a little piece of that with Dr. Selico.
I like that.
Okay.
Yeah, that's right.
I'll have Mrs. Erb can work that up for us. I'll make sure she includes you, Mrs. Schaefer,
Thanks.
on the list. Okay. Anything else on that? I'll work with Mrs. Erb and get that done. Thank you. Item 4, future agenda items. Does anyone have any future agenda items? One thing I'll say, in July, Dr. Cruz is going to do, I'm not calling it a presentation, I'm calling it a summer school celebration. Basically, she's gonna show us some pictures, and we really wanna highlight that for the community because there was so much interest, especially in our reading program this year. We really wanna highlight how even in summer school, we are continuing that literacy piece and keep that excitement going for all the great work in literacy. So it'll be a presentation, but I'm calling it Summer School Celebration. I thought that was more positive. And because it is, we're trying to make summer school seem as this positive thing where it's adding on for families and it's not this punishment, that old mindset.
We are really excited about that celebration, working on a good info round and some fun pictures. Would it be possible to make that for that first week for the first meeting in August? Is that what you wanted?
But
I
we
don't
can do
wanna-
that.
Is that okay?
We can make that work. Anyone have any other future agenda items?
Well, I'd still like to have just the board discuss the book focus. I didn't mean for it to go back out for the staff to do again or anything. But since they're new, I thought they'd enjoy reading it. I just wanna hear their,
I have not finished the book
Opinions.
yet.
Can you,
Well, that's all
I
right.
think there's a lot of uncertainty of what you mean by that because they weren't on the board
Right,
and nor was Dr. Selico here when we
Right.
read it the first time.
right.
So if you could maybe work on what you mean by that, maybe send me an email so we can get a better understanding of what you mean.
I just want a simple discussion. It just, go through the first 3 chapters, read, and then just come back and let's just talk about it, discuss what we thought about it. It's just something I think that, I think we can understand where we are and where we're heading. So it's just an open discussion. I don't think it has to be, again, when you're reading something, you're gonna notice what you think is interesting or important, and I just bring that back as just an open discussion. If the board does not wanna do that, then that's fine too. But that's what I had in mind, just kind of an open, what did you learn, what did you think? And go from there.
Once again, I'm going to reiterate, I think it would be helpful if you prepared your thoughts, maybe send it into an email. That way I could see it. I can send it to Dr. Selico and we can see where that fits because we have goal setting and other things. And while we did the book study on focus and I found the book valuable personally, it's not part of any of our formal district plans going forward. So we have to be careful about overly emphasizing that or resilient leadership when it's not reflected in our strategic plan.
Well, it
as we
does
have
go
it
to the
now.
goals. on what the goals would be, the strategic planning and the goals. And I think that book speaks to that. So again, that's what I just want to get feedback from the other members of the board. But I will do an email.
Thank you.
I will have sometime in August, an update on the ESSER. That has to be done twice a year. So the last time we did it was in February, I believe, or late January. So sometime in August, we'll do the second one for the year.
Okay, thank you. Item 5, committee reports. We have 612 construction core team who are meeting through the summer. Do you have anything to share?
No, we already, pretty much we met, but that was before the planning committee, so they presented pretty much, what we had talked about. And then we meet, I think, the first Thursday in July, I believe is the date for the core, the next core.
Okay, thank you. Athletics and Activities Council, Mrs. Schaefer.
We met on June 6th. They did a spring sports recap, how all the teams did. I think we talked about last time about the weight room was leaking and it was in need of repair, and then that repair has taken place, and painting. They did a coaches meeting, and they wanted to highlight that the schools did a great job at collecting all of the pay-to-play participation fees. And they thought maybe that was a little bit because of the student fees being waived. They talked about going to all online ticketing and no cash at all at the venues. They're going to continue to offer the free senior citizen passes. They're encouraging all of the coaches to continue recruiting youth for programs so that they can kind of come up with the classes in the school sports. Laybourne Soccer and Track Complex. The games looks like they'll be at KSU starting in September and be practicing at Sill. Track practices at Roberts or the high school or another track. I wasn't at the time, we weren't sure. We talked about a couple things about parks and recs and maintenance and upkeep of the fields, because the fields are maintained by Parks and Rec and then not by our own staff, and we're not allowed to go in there and just like mow, like, ooh, senior night, we gotta get that field mowed. It has to come through Parks and Recs. And they talked about some issues with that and possible solutions to make that work better than it currently is. And then they just were bouncing some ideas about moving forward where games are going to be played past this year, since we'll be still working on the new fields. So
Thank you.
that's all I have.
Board policy, we do have a need to have a board policy meeting, so I will send out an email and we'll see. I know it's difficult in summertime because it seems one person's here, somebody else is out. So we'll see what we can do to try to get a meeting set. And then legislative liaison, Mr. Harris, do you have anything?
Yeah,
from-
just briefly. I had mentioned last time House Bill 99 was signed into law by the governor. With that, Senate Bill 168, which is a different legislative recommendation than House Bill 99, is being closely monitored. This bill, sorry, I'm trying to read my writing. This bill would establish a mobile firearms training team, providing required quarterly training for school safety designees. Last Friday, Governor DeWine signed House Bill 583. Some language in the bill was clarified as some issues were recognized implementing the dyslexia laws as districts were beginning to plan for those. So they made some of those changes. Those changes were art, music, phys ed teachers are not required to receive professional development in dyslexia intervention. It clarified that districts need only to comply with provisions in the dyslexia guidebook that are statutorily required. Delayed screening for K through 3 students until 2023-2024 school year. but does allow them to start screening early if possible. And then it removes a multisensory, word from the statutory references and changes it to multisensory structured literacy program. And then lastly, I'm monitoring House Bill 667, which establishes the Grow Your Own Teacher program for low-income students who commit to teaching in a qualifying school for 4 years after they graduate college, providing a $7,500 scholarship per academic year. And upon completion of their 4 years of teaching, the remainder of that loan will be forgiven. So like I said, I'll be monitoring that one as well.
Thank you. And we have good news because with the Acadians contract we approved tonight, and with our high-quality K-5 reading program going to all 6 buildings, we are going to be set to start implementing that dyslexia law in advance. So we're going to get a head start. So kudos to Dr. Cruz and her department on that. Okay. Student Wellness and Success Liaison. I do have one thing I wanted to update. When Holly Merkel was here and gave her report about how one of our school social workers started that group for kinship care for grandparents, I had a little ding go off because I know many of us know Brenda Ryan, and she actually has a group that meets in Cuyahoga Falls. She recently opened a space, and she's been an advocate at the state and national level for kinship care support. So they're linking those together. So instead of duplicating 2 programs in our community, they're creating a community partnership with our schools and with the program that Brenda already runs to provide some of those resources. So that's wonderful to have those resources in our community already. On to item 6, comments, Mr. Harris.
I don't have too much. I just want to congratulate and thank Ms. Stoikoi for everything. I want to thank Mr. Hutch and team for the website that is up and running. I haven't had a chance to dive into it, but I did pull it up and play around a little bit. But it looks really good, so thank you so much for that. And then just thank you to administrators and staff, to the board, everyone. There's folks at home, if you're listening, there's still a lot of work going on right now, even though school is not in session. So just want to acknowledge all that hard work being done. So
Thank you. Mrs. Schaefer?
I don't really have anything else to add to that.
Thank you. Ms. White?
Nope, I don't have anything to add either.
Ms. Coco?
Of course, I was going to say the exact same thing. There's nothing else to add.
Yeah.
I do have something to add. I found out that our esports team, under the leadership of their coach, Mr. Ely, placed 3rd place in a competition recently. So
wow.
Congratulations to our esports team. I also I'm excited about our website. But the other thing I'm excited about is that all these programs that are benefiting our food service with the federal reimbursements, they were all set to expire tomorrow. But a bipartisan bill came out of the Congress, passed very quickly, which helps. It's targeted assistance, so it's not free for everyone. But for anyone that qualifies for free or reduced meals, they will get a free meal, even if they would just qualify for reduced. They will get a free meal for the next year. They also kept some of the nutritional leeway that they put in because they know that we still have issues with shipping and getting certain things in, and they upped the reimbursement by 40 cents as well. So overall, very good news. So thank you to our U.S. Congress for taking some positive action there to help those most in need. And as a district, we do need people to fill out those free and reduced forms to be able to keep those federal funds, not just for that, but for our title funds as well, to qualify for some of those. So it benefits us in a sense because it's going to really motivate families to fill out those free and reduced forms. So while we would prefer to have free meals for everyone, the other option was everything expiring at the end of the day tomorrow. So this is a pretty good win for our students and our families.
that's awesome.
Okay. Item J, executive session. Pursuant to Ohio Revised Code, Section 121.22G1, it is hereby moved that the board adjourn to executive session for the purpose of considering the employment of a public employee.
A second.
Please call the roll.
Ms. Coco?
Aye.
Mr. Gomez?
Aye.
Mr. Harris?
Aye.
Mrs. Schaefer? Ms. White?
Aye.
Thank you. We're going to go to